There was an explosion in the Embakasi area yesterday, and this is just an emerging issue just happened, so maybe you might even not have all the details. Is this something that you've heard, like people talking about? Have you heard about? Do you know maybe anyone who's been affected on the ground? Kia, I'm going to come to you. Just briefly tell us about this.
I literally had to text one of the head journalists from KBC, who I work with closely today, about the explosion, just to make sure that it wasn't media hyping something up, because I literally live in Kilimani, and where this happened is not that far, and I heard nothing about it. But it is indeed true. But I didn't hear anything about it, to be quite honest. So my heart goes out to those who did lose family, and those who are injured. But I had to ask a journalist to make sure that it was true, because I literally live like maybe 15 minutes away from where it happened, and I didn't hear anything about it. But that could just be me.
Okay, all right. Asante sana. Just coming back to the studio briefly, it's something that just happened. Omosh Fire, I don't know whether you've heard, whether you have any family maybe that lives around the area, or any friends, or just anything that you've heard about this explosion.
So the explosion happened in Embakasi, close to Nyayo Estate, which is rather, I guess it's kind of popular for a lot of people who work around probably industrial area, the airport, in the what is it? Is it EPZ zone?
EPZ.
Yeah, EPZ zone.
Export processing
yes.
zone, yeah.
And people who probably commute also from there coming back into town. I just so happen to have a tenant who lives in Nyayo Estate.
Okay.
And so I saw videos initially of the blast, and then the next day, I guess today, we saw videos of the aftermath, and that thing was not.
No, it was no joke.
It was no joke.
Yeah, it looked like Afghanistan. It looked like Gaza. It did. Like the videos I was seeing, those explosions.
It was bad.
Was,
there was a car that was actually on the top of one of those roofs.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the water tanks were blown out. And when you look where, the blast itself happened, or where the fire and all of that, it was like, pretty much everything in that area is black. It's burnt out. But more so was the buildings that were on the side or next door, the Nyayo Estate buildings that were close to that particular property, had cracked walls from the roof, coming down to, like, let's say if it's like a 3-tier, the third floor. So probably those people are not going to be able to live in those houses, at least either until they've been inspected and they make sure that they're structurally sound. And then Embakasi has a water problem. So just imagine that even if maybe your water stuff was affected, and then you still have to go buy a water tank, and it's not like a water tank is like, $20K. Those things are like $40K plus.
Yeah, those things are not cheap.
The ones that I saw there, those guys, they're not cheap. So I feel for them. I did reach out to my tenant. My tenant is okay, but it was worrying because I think the bigger issue was you heard the blast, you saw the fire, but you didn't know what was going on.
Okay.
So you're like, okay, is this an attack? What are we supposed to do? Where do we go? Then we go back to things like emergency preparedness and things like that. Like, what are they doing to allay fears of folks? What's happening? It just seems like this thing, of course, granted, caught them unawares, but then it's the aftermath. Like, what did they do afterwards? They are just, I don't know. We have competent people who act incompetently. Okay. In my opinion.
All right, we have competent people who act incompetently. So I think this is an issue that we need a whole show about. I personally have a background in working for a company that handles disaster management, so I know a thing or two about like handling disasters. And with Kenya, I feel like we sometimes tend to repeat the same mistakes. over the different disasters that we've experienced,
multiple,
like starting from dating back, like from the 98 bombing all the way to Westgate and all other kinds of disasters.
And it's like they never learn.
Yeah, and even disasters where buildings are collapsing, because of an incorrect foundation. So this is something that I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, because today is Kia's Day, and we want to focus on what she's come here to do in the studio, but of course this is something that just happened, and we had to give it a mention. We're going to talk about it maybe a little bit later on, and the listeners, Evans Marube here is saying, Wapi huyo Nay wa Mitego from TZ sums up the current status in Kenya. Of course, Nay wa Mitego released a song. He never mentioned Kenya, but everything he was describing,
you can infer
corruption, you can infer that this is what's happening in Kenya.
But he was actually singing about Tanzania.
Yeah, but that's a beauty of poetry.
Yes,
that's a beauty of poetry.
That's why
you may have
said if everybody could get that he was singing about TZ, he would not be there. They would have. Maybe he's still yet
that's
to
a
be
beauty
locked
of
up.
poetry. Like a lady may be singing a poem about Mika without mentioning him, but me mjukuu nisikie, and I think she's singing about me.
Unajua inaitwangaje? Delulu.
Okay, Delulu.
Yes.
Okay. Sawa. A new term we're learning here. Now is the basic structure, and which is not.